All right, let's get this show on the road because we do have a lot to cover tonight. So welcome everybody. I am Karen Hansen. I'm the Marketing and Communication Manager here at Can Do Canines, and I'll be presenting questions later during our time. We are so glad to have so many of you with us this evening. I think we had about 230 at last count when we were looking at registration. So we are very pleased to share with so many of you tonight. I do want to give a special shout out to those of you who submitted questions. That is very helpful for us. And we have many in the queue. So I do want to say that if you have something on your mind right now and didn't submit something ahead of time, maybe just hold that thought for the first 15 minutes or so that we can get through the ones that are in the queue. And it's possible that yours will be answered in that process. If you do have a question you'd like to submit, though, you can do so by clicking on the Q&A button on the bottom of your screen and typing your question into send, and we will get to as many as we can by 8 o'clock, and they can be submitted. We'll determine if they're for Jeff, Julianne, or Denise. I want to mention, too, that we do have closed captioning available. You just click on the live transcript icon and select show subtitle if you need that. In addition, we have Maddie here with us tonight, and so I want to thank her for interpreting for us. So to the others on the screen, I want to say Jeff Johnson, our Executive Director, is here, along with Julianne Larson, who is our Director of Training. They are going to be giving you some exciting details about the expansion plans that we have. And we also have our Client Services Manager, Denise Yoakum, and she is going to share a little about the matchmaking process that we have for clients and dogs, so that can always work out as well as it does. So I am going to go behind the scenes now. You'll hear from me from time to time, but you'll see the others' faces popping in and out as we go through. So I'm going to turn this over to Jeff.
Awesome. Thank you, Karen. And I just want to thank everybody online for joining us. We have a lot to share with you tonight, and we're excited to let you know some of the big things that we are doing and that we're going to be doing soon. The headline items: we have a new 10-year growth plan. We have plans to build on our property. And last week, we just signed a purchase agreement for a kennel facility west of the Twin Cities. And that is on top of new partnerships and new programs and new staff. There's just a lot going on, and we look forward to sharing that all with you tonight. I do want to thank Karen and Denise and Julianne and Peter, who's behind the scenes, for making this program happen, and also Madison, our ASL interpreter. And I want to thank you all, not just for watching, but for your support and for your interest in what we do. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Julianne Larson, who's our Director of Training.
Thank you, Jeff. Hello, everyone. I am very happy to be with all of you tonight. My name, as was said, is Julianne Larson. I am the Director of Training. I oversee all aspects of programming, so basically everything dog and client related. I have been with Can Do Canines for over 20 years now, and have seen so many changes and growth over those years, including moving to our current facility here in New Hope, the addition of prison programs and utilizing inmate handlers to raise dogs for us, and the growth of our incredibly talented staff. I'm so excited for the next part of this journey as we venture into setting up a puppy center that is going to enable us to whelp our litters of puppies in one location. Before introducing our next panelist, I do want to take this moment to thank all of our volunteers who over the years have contributed their homes, their time, their passion, and really their heart and soul to our whelping program. We just couldn't have done any of that, any of what we've done without all of you and the rest of our volunteers. I'm hoping tonight will help kind of alleviate fears and concerns. I know change is hard. We're here to answer as many questions as we can. With that being said, there may be some answers that we don't have yet, but we are absolutely happy to continue to share information as we go. And please feel free to reach out to any of us at any time if you have questions along the way. And remember, we couldn't do this without all of you. And I look forward to the next step of the journey with you. With that, I would like to pass you along to Denise.
All right, good evening. Good evening, everyone. As Julianne mentioned, I am Denise and I am the Client Services Manager. For those of you who don't know, the Client Services and Graduate Services team, we handle everything client related. So anything from the processing of applications to training match clients with their dogs, and then supporting the teams throughout the life of the team. So all of it, everything team related. But with that, I want to take just a few minutes to kind of give everyone really just an overview of our matching process. And what I mean by that is, how do we match approved applicants or our clients to a Can Do Canine? How do we match them with their teammate? So there's really, we think of it, there's like two sides to this process. So the client services side, we represent the applicant or the client, and then the program trainers, and they represent the dogs that are in for final training or who will be coming in soon. Okay, so from the client side, the client service coordinators, we will share information that was obtained during the interview. So this will be things like the client's disability. What is their personality? Are they bubbly and outgoing? Are they a little bit more introverted? How are they that way? Dog experience. Have they owned dogs in the past? Have they trained dogs in the past? And then what environment do they live? Do they work? Even going to school? We discuss any possible physical limitations of each individual. And then what kind of support do they have from others? Okay. Are there family members to consider? Young children, a lot of family that's in and out a lot of times, or other caregivers that might be within the home, or pets in the home. There's other dogs. I think we've had, let's see, a cockroach, a sugar glider, and then farm animals, some different, chickens, horses, things like that, that are a part of a client's life as well. How do they travel? Do they travel by metro? Do they buses, trains? Do they have their own vehicle that they drive around town in? And then lastly, what skills is that client looking for? What kind of skills do they want that dog to perform for them to help mitigate their disability? Okay. And then from the dog side of it, the program trainers, they comb through those volunteer reports and reports from the inmates. So for all of you volunteer homes that we have out there, those forms that you complete, that you turn in when you bring a dog back, those are so valuable. We get a lot of information from those. And it doesn't matter if you've had a dog for a year or 6 months or a week. That is information that the program trainers look at when it comes to matching. And then from these reports, they're looking at anything from the dog's personalities, any behavioral concerns that they have. What about the outings that they have been taken out on? Have they been to sporting events or concerts or the museums, doctor's appointments, anything, all the things that our clients will do as well. And then once those dogs come in for final training and they're here at the facility, each of those dogs is evaluated and their strengths are identified, and they get a sense of what career might they want to lean towards. Do they want to be a hearing assist dog? Do they want to be a mobility assist? What do they want to do with their lives now? What's their career? And then are there particular skills that the dogs are really strong at, that they love to do and they're just so excited to do it? And are there other things that they struggle with and they can do it, but they'd rather not? It's not their favorite thing to do. So these are all things that when we look at the client aspect and we look at the dog, it becomes this magical matchmaking kind of process as we try to bring those together to try to make that right match. So is it an exact science? Not at all. But we really do our best to ensure that we're going to get the correct match the right time. So that's really important to us. So that's just really a big overview of how this goes. Okay, so I hope that helps a little bit. I could go on and on forever, but you know, there's other things to learn tonight. So I will hand it back to Karen now.
Great. Thanks, Denise, and everybody. Since we do have this new exciting news about purchasing a facility, I know that Jeff wants to take a little time to give more details before we do jump into the questions from the audience. So Jeff, maybe your first question is, what can you tell us?
Well, there's a lot, and I can tell you, but I just really want to spend a minute or two on each of those three big things that I talked about at the beginning: our growth goal, building on property, and then this brand new purchase agreement that we signed for a kennel facility out west. Because they're all interrelated, one of them would not be happening if the other two weren't, and vice versa. So I'll just say that the discussions about this started well over 2 years ago. Some of this started before I even came 2.5 years ago, but it has really picked up in the past couple of years. And between staff and board and volunteers and clients that we've asked to be involved in this, I'd say people have put in literally hundreds of hours of both work time and meeting time to get to the point of these three big decisions. So decision number one is growth. The board, about probably 3 months or so ago, passed a resolution, and one of the parts of that resolution is that we would grow to certify 70 teams a year by 2033. So a 10-year goal of getting us to 70 teams. And to give you some context for that, for the past decade or so, we've kind of been in the 40s pretty much every year. I think we hit 51 a couple of times, including last year, and our goal this year is 52. So to grow to 70 is about a 40% increase in teams, which is a bold and exciting goal. But keep in mind, it's over 10 years, and that makes the goal, I think, very doable in a responsible way. But what's particularly exciting about this for all of us is that we get to change more lives. And that's why we exist as an organization. And if we could change 200 lives instead of 70 directly, we would. But we believe that 70 is an aggressive but reasonable goal to set. The reason it took so long, the reason we spent over 2 years on all this, is that we needed to figure out, what do we need to do to grow in this way without changing who we are, without sacrificing the quality that we are very proud of in this organization. And so we spent about a year with a group looking through that. We put together a report. We called it the 2030 report because our initial goal was a 7-year goal. We changed that to 10 years to make it more realistic. And we put numbers down, and we recognized that in order to do this reasonably, we need more volunteers, we need more staff, we need more money. We need the right number of dogs ready to go at just the right time. And we are working on plans to make sure all of those things happen. But we also know, in order to do this, that we need more space. We can't do what we want to do in our current building. We're already bursting at the seams. And I'll just add that this is an amazing facility, and it's paid for, and it's on land that has enough room to allow us to build. And really all the credit for that goes to our founder, Al Peters. If he hadn't done all of that, we wouldn't be able to have this conversation that we're having right now. So I'm very thankful for that. But now we realize that moving forward, we need more office space and more training space and more warehouse space and more meeting space, more overnight rooms for our out-of-town clients. And then more importantly than any of that, we need to figure out a way to whelp in-house on property with the involvement of both volunteers and staff in person. So that's number two. Number one was our growth goal. Number two is that the board also said we are committed now to build on property to solve all of these space goals or all these space issues, and then also create a puppy center or a whelping center that will allow us to whelp on site. And we're in the very, very early stages of that discussion. We don't even have plans drawn up yet. And we're going to pull more people in to start talking about that. But stay tuned in the coming months. You will be hearing a lot more about that. And then finally, goal number three, which was all part of that same resolution, is what happened with the kennel facility out west in the little town or outside the little town of New Germany, which is about 45 to 50-minute drive from our facility. The board said in this resolution that at the same time that we are looking to build in order to whelp on site, we are going to find a way to start whelping temporarily over the probably 4 or 5 years that it is now going to take for us to be able to actually whelp on site. And the reason they said that, the reason that we decided that we needed to do something temporarily is because we don't have enough whelping homes to even sustain what we're doing right now, let alone to grow. The ones we have, the whelping volunteers we have are absolutely amazing. That's not a good enough word, to be honest, but it's the only one I can think of right now. They're absolutely amazing. But we are learning that recruiting new whelping volunteers, especially in this post-COVID age, is very, very difficult. This is not true of us. This is true of every organization in the world right now. COVID changed things, and recruiting volunteers is difficult. Recruiting volunteers for something as complicated and time-consuming as whelping is even more difficult. And then we're also finding that our amazing current whelping volunteers, in many cases, their lives are changing. Some of them are retiring. Some of them are moving to a different state, full-time or part-time. Others of them have gotten different jobs. There's a few of them who have even burned out after 2 or 5 or 9 whelps, which I completely understand. And so we've found in the last year and a half that we've often been unable to find whelping homes at the specific time that we need them. And because of that, we have passed up last year. Julianne tells me that we passed up 7 breeding opportunities. And this year already, we've passed up 4 more breeding opportunities, largely because we don't have whelping homes to whelp them. Not completely for that reason, but largely for that reason. And when that happens now, 2 years from now, when those dogs who would have been born are not there to serve a new client, we are going to be short of dogs. And we're actually going to see a dip in our numbers for a couple of years because of that. But if on top of that, we wait 4 to 5 more years in order to start whelping on site, we'll actually shrink over the next 10 years as opposed to grow as we want to grow. And that's not what we want to do. So the board committed to that. We formed a small group of board members and staff and a volunteer who just happens to be an architect, which was very helpful. And for the last 2 months, we've been meeting multiple times to discuss every possible option for temporarily whelping for the next 4 to 5 years. And I can tell you, we've been extremely creative in the options that we've looked at. But after looking at all of them, everyone has now agreed that there's only one realistic option, and that is to find an existing kennel somewhere within driving distance of our facility that is already zoned, that already has a conditional use permit in place that will allow us to do what we need to do. And we look back over the last 6 months, there has only been one such kennel available for sale. It happens to be the one that we are purchasing out in New Germany. And I can tell you from a time standpoint, Julianne and Karen and I visited that facility looking at it as a possible solution to our problems in January. We put an offer in June. And so some people might argue that we did too much due diligence, but we absolutely wanted to make sure, because this is such a big decision, that it was the right decision. And everyone involved in this is absolutely confident that it is our best way forward. So we are excited about what's happening. It is big change. It is, sometimes gives you a little bit of nervousness because there's a lot that's going to be involved in it, but it paints a very bright future for our organization. So Karen, with that, that's kind of my intro. If you want to get into the questions, that would be fantastic.
Okay, thanks, Jeff. You mentioned about 4 or 5 years until a building project might be completed, but can you say anything more about the expected timeline, maybe as it relates to how the current whelpers will function? How much longer will that be done in homes?
Yep.
And what that transition process will be?
Yeah, so part of that will depend on when we actually close on the deal in New Germany. And we're going to try to come up with a great name for this new facility, but I'll call it New Germany for tonight, or the Puppy Center. And we expect that'll be at least 60 days before that happens. And then there will probably be another at least short period to get everything set up. I mean, it's turnkey, it's ready to go. It's an amazing kennel facility for us, but we will need a little time to get it to go. So we might be still asking whelping homes in the coming few months to whelp if a mom presents that for us. But we should be whelping out there pretty soon.
Okay, we're going to let you catch your breath for a second. I'm going to go to Julianne because Julianne, someone actually wrote in and said, I know exactly what place you're talking about. It was a great training and boarding facility. I trained all 3 of my dogs there. So they're just wondering about what it's going to be looking like as far as the volunteers versus staff members, who's going to be paid, who's going to be volunteering out there to make that site function.
Yeah, so as part of our preparation in getting ready to get this new puppy center up and running, those are a lot of the questions that we are talking about behind the scenes here. Karen, our breeding coordinator, will be full-time at that facility. This point, we're anticipating maybe adding probably 2 part-time staff. And then we are going to begin looking for volunteers both within our current volunteer pool. Love to have some of our experienced whelping home volunteers help us out there as well. And then also start recruiting some new volunteers. With this facility being a little bit further away, we're hoping it opens up a whole nother area of potential volunteers. And it sounds like you must be in that area, the person that asked that question. So hoping, yes, that you would want to volunteer out there. But there may be some changes as we go and figure this out. I have spent a lot of time in the past years talking to other organizations that do have puppy centers or whelping facilities about how they run them and what has worked for them and what hasn't. So I'm learning as much as I can from others. I've been and visited other puppy centers and bringing some of that back to help us be successful in ours.
And I'm going to go back to Jeff with this one then to continue on with that. Jeff, people are curious. You've already raised the fact that it's become more and more difficult to get volunteers. So now in this new geographic community, do we have any thoughts of recruiting more volunteers potentially in that area? And if so, who will train and work with them?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this actually presents a wonderful opportunity for us. I think I have shared in past of these meetings that our biggest challenge right now, and certainly our biggest challenge with growth, is volunteers, which is universal. Everybody's having this same problem. We are seeing an uptick because of some of the efforts that have been happening here. But we still have a long ways to go. And here is just one of, I think, several opportunities where we now have a new geography. Certainly that area is less sparsely populated than the suburbs or Minneapolis or St. Paul, but there are a lot of small to mid-sized communities out there that are very fast growing. It's one of the fastest growing areas. So you've got Victoria nearby, you have Waconia nearby, you've got Chaska and Carver and Watertown and Glencoe, just a lot of these, communities of a few thousand, up to 10,000 or a little more than that. And we've never really been able to tap them very well, but we're going to be physically present now near their community. So I think we're going to have a new opportunity both to recruit volunteers to help with the whelping process at 4 hours or 8 hours at a time, but also hopefully being able to recruit people to become puppy raisers for us. So it's a great opportunity.
All right. And going back to Julianne, we just talked a little about trying to recruit some new volunteers, but let's talk about those who have been helping out so diligently. What is that going to look like for those who have been offering their homes for whelping? How would we like to see them stay involved? And what will that look like as far as commitments and shifts and days of the week and all of that, if this early?
Yeah, it's a little tricky yet. We have some thoughts and ideas of what this might look like. Our plan is very shortly, hopefully by early next week, to send out some questionnaires to our current whelping homes or people that have been active whelping homes over the past 3 to 4 years, to get some feedback from them. How would they like to be involved? What kind of things did they really enjoy doing when they had a litter in their home? What were the things that were tougher that they could kind of do without? How many of our current experienced whelping home volunteers are willing to travel out to New Germany and take a shift, whether it's a 4-hour shift or an 8-hour shift, kind of depending on how that shakes out. So there's a lot yet that we still have to figure out, but that's going to be the first step, is talking to our current active whelping home volunteers to get some feedback from them. So if you are listening, expect something next week.
Jeff, someone had asked already, were there any surveys done by whelping home volunteers regarding the new facility or interim facility?
Yeah, we haven't yet, because it really wasn't the right time for that. But as Julianne mentioned, they're going to be sending something out to start that process. Julianne and Karen are also going to form a group of whelpers that can spend some time together and really think through, how does our new built facility work down the road? We're going to learn a lot by having this temporary facility, but there's nobody who's going to be able to help us make those decisions better than the current folks who have been doing it in their homes for years. So the surveying will happen going forward, but previously we just made this offer last week, so it didn't make a ton of sense to be asking questions about how we're going to do this until we knew where we were going to do this.
Okay. Are you able to answer, Jeff, then what is the total cost projected for this interim facility and the new facility, both the New Germany site and potential new project here?
Lots of money, I can tell you that much, but we're confident we will be able to get there. So we paid, after quite a bit of negotiation over a few days, we'll be paying $850,000 for the new facility, which is right about where it is, where the market value sits, just slightly above that. We are going to take out a loan for a portion of that, but we also have money set aside for strategic purposes, and we'll be using part of that to keep the loan a bit lower. We're also going to make sure the loan has a provision that allows us to pay it off early, because that's what we'd intend to do, is start raising money soon in order to both launch a capital campaign, but also pay off this facility in the short term, so we're not spending a lot of money on interest. Then the new facility, that is a question mark, based upon what other organizations have done in building whelping facilities in the past few years, because several other ADI organizations. We're estimating it'll probably be right around $5 million to build the addition. We may add a little on to that in order to upgrade a few spots within this building. And then to pay off that building, we might be looking at somewhere in the $5s, possibly even a $6 million capital campaign, but that should cover everything.
So Jeff, since this new facility that we just purchased is so, as you said, turnkey, do we need to even bother with a potential building project? Why don't we just keep that forever and ever?
Well, I think that's a really fair question, and it's conceivable that would happen, but I don't think so. And I'll give a couple reasons why, in my mind at least, and I think in the mind of most of the people who've been involved in this, that the New Germany facility is probably not the right permanent answer to this whelping internally issue. Number one, there's just a lot of extra overhead in having two completely separate properties. So we'll be paying for 2 people to come and plow the snow and 2 people to mow the grass. We'll have another full menu of utilities to pay, rather than just an incremental addition because we add on to this building. There's a house, it's 10 acres. There's a large 35-year-old house on this property. It's a nice house, but we now have a house. And with that come expenses. We will recoup some of that by renting the house out, but long-term, I don't know that I want to be a landlord for the next 20, 25 years. We'll also be paying property taxes on this property because it was a for-profit business before. We will certainly go to the township and ask to be excused from property taxes, but I wouldn't bet a lot of money that we'll be successful at that. So just bottom line, there's a lot more overhead in having 2 pieces of property. And we actually have the land to build on right here. So that's a big plus. another issue would be that this would solve our whelping issue, but it doesn't solve any of our other space issues. So we would still need to add on to the facility here at a lesser cost, but nonetheless, we'd still be spending a bunch of money to solve all those other issues. And then finally, it's 50 minutes away on a good day. It's probably closer to an hour if there's any traffic or if there's any weather. And we have 35 to 40 employees. As we grow, maybe we'll have 45 to 50 employees, but having two totally separate campuses, unless you've got a couple hundred employees, to me, I don't think that's great for the culture of an organization. I would much prefer that we be all in one place together. And again, we've got the land for it to build right here. So I don't think it's a great permanent option. And that's why we're just looking at it probably for the next 4 to 5 years.
All right. We do have questions coming in fast and furiously, but we are still queued up with the ones that were pre-submitted. So we're going to keep working our way through things. But just on this topic in particular, Julianne, maybe you can just clarify for people wondering, will we be doing any in-home volunteer whelping homes, or will that be discontinued once we begin in New Germany?
We anticipate that all of the whelps will happen in the New Germany facility. This is large enough to handle more litters than we anticipate breeding over the next 10 plus years. So to keep things kind of standardized and consistent, our plan would be then to do all of the whelps at the facility.
Okay, and given its location, will there be a relationship with a vet who can handle emergency whelping concerns closer to that facility than the ones that we've previously used?
Yeah, so that's one of the first things on my list now that I know that our offer was accepted on this facility is to start making some visits to vets out in that area and see if we can't get 1 or 2 vets in closer to them, closer to the New Germany property and involved with us and see what I can come up with. But that is the plan, to try to find somebody a little bit closer.
Perfect. Denise, are you still with us? We did have some questions come in for you ahead of time too, and so I want to make sure we do not neglect those because we have some exciting news that's been happening in your area too regarding facility dogs. So it was asked, do facility dogs go through the same certification tests as the other assistance dogs?
Yeah, they do. That's a really good question. But yes, they do have to go through both the public access test, it's maybe just slightly modified, and then also their skill certification. And these requirements are set by ADI, or Assistance Dogs International. So we have to still follow those requirements in order to maintain our accreditation. So yeah, they still have to go through the same certification. They just might look a little bit different based on their role.
And on those same lines, are their CAPE rights limited to just their assigned facility and other community locations related to their job, or can they go out elsewhere?
No, so they do not have full public access rights. Their CAPE rights are specific to the facility that they work at, or in the case of like our dogs who are with Masonic, you know, if they're doing events that are sponsored by Masonic or their donors. But otherwise, no, they don't have CAPE rights. They can't, you know, on their way home, run into Target on their way home with their dog, things like that. It's specifically for their facility or anything tied to their facility.
And can you just, one last question, and we might give you a breather again, but can you give more examples of what the facility dogs are doing?
Well, it really depends on the facility that they're working at. When we are approached by each facility, you know, when they're looking to have a facility dog, we're asking them, what are you looking for a dog to do? Because again, because of ADI, these dogs, they're still skill trained. So it really depends on the facility. So for instance, our dogs that are working within Masonic Hospital, they are doing medical play. They are still doing a snuggle or even some deep pressure therapy that, other of our clients would like to have. They might be doing, for instance, our dog who's within one of the, be working kind of in a courthouse with the Anoka attorney's office, recognizing stimming behaviors and helping to interrupt those stimming behaviors with the clientele that they're working with. So it really just depends on the facility. But those are just some examples of what they'll be doing.
Perfect, thanks. Julianne, let's go back to talking a little bit more about this exciting whelping center. You mentioned Karen's presence there, but maybe speak more specifically to this set of questions. Someone asked, what plans are there to maintain trajectory knowledge of the puppies and mom? Meaning, if there is a failure to thrive or a certain intervention is no longer working, will there be one person that is seeing the litter on a daily basis to assess that?
Yes, so Karen absolutely will be at this facility full-time and will always and is always willing to go and check if things need 7 days a week if needed. The addition of other staff will mean that there's a lot of communication between the staff members that we have, so that whatever staff person is there on whatever day, they know what they're looking at and they understand the situation going on, so that we do make sure that we have good records and we know what's happening, and if there needs to be any other intervention going on with a puppy or a mama dog. So we do plan heavy staff involvement to make sure that those things are monitored closely.
And how early will a mom dog come to the facility prior to delivery?
We're anticipating 7 to 10 days prior to their due date, so that the mom gets a chance to settle in a little bit and get comfortable in her new surroundings, kind of like how if we're transferring them to a different home for whelping, making sure they settle in and have time for that.
Okay. Jeff, I'd like you to take this one of, given these changes, will this speed up our ability to provide more dogs in a timely manner?
Well, absolutely it should, because as we look at least 2 years down the road now, as we've been passing up these breeding opportunities, we're actually going to be short of dogs and our wait list is going to grow. And unless we can change that and make sure that we can whelp puppies when a mom is ready for that to happen, I think it's actually going to get much harder for us, and our wait time is going to be longer. So this will absolutely help in that.
Yeah, I just want to tag on to that. Somebody did express concern that seems that puppies are lagging in their foster homes and the prisons already. So are you saying that can maybe find some cure with this? That they're not being placed until they're 3 years old right now?
Yeah, I don't know that this will affect that issue, and I will let Julianne address that kind of bigger issue that we've, generally not 3 years, but we definitely, the dogs have been staying with us a bit longer than what we ideally would love, and the biggest piece of that is just the lack of volunteer homes in some cases. But I don't know if Julianne, you have anything to add to that one?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I understand the question, and with kind of the backlog that we've been dealing with pretty much since COVID, we had a slowdown in applications, particularly of mobility assist clients, due to concerns, being out in public and fragile medical health. So we're seeing an uptick in those applications. So that is helping a lot. We also, with our strategic growth plan, do have in place timing for adding additional staff. So adding program trainers that work for the dogs here in the kennel, and all of those things. So we certainly won't be, just because we can breed X number of litters doesn't necessarily mean we will. We still will look at all of the factors involved, which include, puppy raiser homes or prison placement opportunities and things like that. So all those things will be taken into consideration as we move forward with whether or not we breed a litter.
Okay. Denise, I'm going to pop back to you because talking about timing in this way. A couple of people have asked, what is the estimated wait time these days for dogs? Yep, tricky question.
Oh, that is such a black and white answer. It, gosh, well, as you know, as many people know, our autism wait is still 2.5 to 3 years. Something that we're continually working on. For our other areas, I would say on average around 6 months, kind of a wait time. And I think with this, it's important as we think about the wait times and, you know, as our clients are waiting for dogs, and some have been waiting for 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 months, whatever it might be. When we look at our matching process, and something that I did not talk about is we don't just take the next dog in line and match it with the next client. You know, like all those factors that I talked about, we really take into consideration. And then with that, we oftentimes will have a litter of dogs that excel at one career over another. We're not forcing the dogs to pick a career. And that's sometimes where our backlogs happen. And so we're always trying to balance that as well. But, you know, for the most part, if there is not a dog allergy concern, probably around, I would say 4 to 6 months is, you know, what our goal would be. But, you know, if there's special circumstances, special cues that are needed, special skills, it might be a little bit longer. So, because again, we want to make the right match, not just match somebody with the next dog in line.
Okay. Jeff, going back to you, can you explain a little more of what the actual advantages of having a puppy center for whelping compared to existing whelping homes really
Yep.
is?
Yeah, that's a great question. And there are several. I mean, the one that comes to mind first is just the bottom line. We can't grow or even sustain what we're doing with our current model. We just can't. We have outgrown the model. It probably worked pretty well when we were graduating 35, maybe even 40 teams a year, and pre-COVID, when it was a bit easier to recruit volunteers. But it's not working anymore. And unless we want to actually retreat in our numbers as opposed to serve more people, we have to change the model. I will add to that Julianne and I, between the two of us, have either visited in person or talked to, I think, probably every ADI organization that's kind of in the mid-size to larger tier, maybe those top 15 to 20. We're right in the middle of that top 15 to 20 in size, that have a breeding program, and no one uses this model. We don't believe there is another organization that's larger than very small that does in-home whelping. We were completely unique in that. That doesn't make it bad that we were unique, but the problem is it's just not working anymore. So we do have to look at changing it. There are other advantages though, other than that, just that bottom line. We believe that it is good overall for our volunteers, it's good for our staff, and that it's good for the dogs. With respect to the volunteers, I've had a lot of volunteers in the last 2.5 years tell me, I would love to whelp, but I just cannot commit, 5 weeks of my life and turn my house over to you, essentially. If there was a way to break that down into smaller increments, I'd jump at the chance. We've had existing whelping volunteers who say, I can't do this anymore, it's just too much, if there were a way to break it down. Now, we do know that we have volunteers who probably won't like this decision because they love to whelp for us. They are so committed to it, and we so appreciate that. But overall, we believe that for the larger group of volunteers, it's going to present many new opportunities for people that they didn't have before. We believe it's good for staff. Staff now with volunteers is going to be personally present at every whelp, and present with volunteers during those crucial first few hours and during the crucial first few weeks of enrichment. And that's a big plus for our staff. And then finally, for the dogs, we do believe this is better. And I honestly hesitate to bring it up because I don't want anyone to misinterpret it as a criticism of our whelping volunteers, because they're absolutely amazing. But the reality is, having a consistency of place that every whelp is going to be done in a building that has been designed specifically for whelping purposes and been equipped specifically for whelping purposes, and is sterile, or at least as sterile as we can get it, certainly more sterile than my home would be, is a good thing for dogs. And having consistency in process, that every whelp is exactly the same, we believe is going to be good for the calmness and the health of the mom, as well as the health of the pups. And then I'll throw in just one more thing on this. I have never felt good, as long as I've been here, at making whelping volunteers deal with difficult emergency situations, sometimes life or death situations for a mom or puppies. And in fact, in some cases, actually having to make a life or death decision because we're not there. I don't think that's a good practice. I don't think it's a fair practice for our volunteers. And if we're able to whelp internally with volunteers helping us, we won't have to do that anymore. And so I think overall, this is just a real positive for most everyone involved.
Julianne, I'm coming your way because you can look at the other side of this too, in that in using homes, they were locked down to limit access to the pregnant mom and new puppies. So how will that protocol change with this concept, with people, volunteers coming in and out, and reducing that risk of disease and contamination?
Yeah, so one of the first things once we are in this facility, before we have dogs there, that we will be doing is building kind of in the entry area, basically a sally port area with a couple of changing rooms. And beyond that, so volunteers and staff that come in will change clothes and shoes before they kind of step over the magic line of where we're in a sterile environment. So that's the big way of reducing any risk of anything passing from the outside into this facility, which is more secure, germ-wise, I guess, than most people's homes, because you can't expect, your family members every time they come home that they're going to change clothes and wash and shoes and all the things. So there will be safety protocols in place to ensure the health and well-being of all the puppies that are in that facility. So that's the plan.
All right. I'll maybe have you stay on, Julianne, when you can decide if this tosses to Jeff. But we've talked about having some new volunteers. Are there ideas of what type of volunteer opportunities might be anticipated at the puppy center? And then what kind of training, for the people that maybe even have never whelped before, could they start now?
Yeah, so as Jeff mentioned, we plan there will be a staff member at every birth, right? So along with one, maybe two volunteers, depending on the situation and things like that. So perfect opportunities for staff to be training in new volunteers, what to watch for, what to do in this situation and that. I don't ever anticipate not having a staff person at a whelp anymore. So there will always be one staff person there. We are envisioning using volunteers in so many ways, and that's some of the things that are going to be on the questionnaire we'll be sending out. But things like the puppy enrichment, depending on, once the puppies reach certain ages, they will be going into different areas in the facility with different enrichment toys, being exposed to the different sights and sounds and smells. And those are the things that we're going to rely heavily on volunteers to come in and do. Who doesn't like playing with puppies, right? So I think that'll be a popular volunteer opportunity, as well as, the litter care, caring for mom, helping give the mom some exercise and attention and grooming and love. So we're working on our list right now of different opportunities, and should be coming out very soon for everybody to take a look at.
Sounds exciting. We do have just over 10 minutes to go and still a good amount of questions. So I'm going to give you all permission to keep your answers as short as you maybe would like to. But on the volunteer topic still, Jeff, maybe maybe have we reached out to to veteran organizations for volunteers before?
I don't know, honestly, if we have, we've talked about this before, and I know we have reached out to them. I don't know if we've reached out with any success, but I know that Lori and I have had the conversation about that. It's a great opportunity for us. So we will, we'll continue. And I would encourage, if there is someone asking a question who has a good internal connection with a veterans organization, shoot me an email, because we'll jump at the chance to talk to them and give them a presentation if they're willing.
Great. I'll keep you handy here for this next one. Will you expect that we might expand the people who have different types of disabilities that the dogs are trained to assist? Any new services, perhaps, as part of the expansion plans in the future?
Right now, no would be the answer to that. And that's something that we discussed as a group, as a board and staff. Do we want to, as we grow the number of people we're able to serve, do we want to expand the number of disabilities that we serve? And when we did a pretty deep dive into what is the need in Minnesota and Wisconsin for the 5 different types of disabilities we serve. And then we're serving 1/100th of 1% of the people that have those different conditions, or less than that in some cases. So we believe that the need is still tremendous where we already sit, just based on those 5 different sorts of disabilities. And rather than expand to something new, we just need to continue to raise our profile, which has been a priority, but needs to continue to be so more people know about us.
All right. Julianne, I'm going to go to you. Speaking of all this growth, a question came in of how many dogs do you plan to breed in the next year and in the future? And will you breed more golden retrievers and dogs other than labs?
So
They're cute dogs.
yeah,
Can't blame them.
right. We haven't set goals yet for next year, but I will say our goal for this year was to whelp 13 litters. We will not reach that goal because we did have to skip several potential breedings so far this year. I think we've whelped now 5 so far this year, and we have 3 girls that we have bred or are in the process of breeding. So if I had to kind of guess for next year, I would think probably set a goal of 13 to 15 litters, but I have to break down the numbers and check that for sure. But that would be my best guess on that. We currently do breed labs, goldens, and crosses of those 2. We don't often, and maybe never, have had a purebred golden retriever litter, just because we have a difficulty getting goldens that work well for us. So passing the health clearances needed to be a breeding dog and those kinds of things. So we will continue to work with some goldens, but I don't anticipate a big expansion into purebred golden retrievers. And at this point, not considering other breeds.
I'm going to continue on with you, go into this next question then of, as we do the breeding and get puppies into the system, can the prisons handle the increase? And maybe explain a little bit what that means for some people who aren't familiar.
Yeah, sure. So each of our prison programs that we currently have, we have 2 what we call weaning prisons. So those 2 prisons handle mom and babies. When the babies are around 5 to 6 weeks old, the litter and the mother go into one of our 2 weaning prisons. We are planning to continue using those. We find them very valuable. We think they are very helpful too for the volunteers that then get a puppy from one of the weaning prisons at 10 weeks of age that's started, understands sleeping in a crate, and started on potty training. So we absolutely plan to continue using those weaning prisons. Potentially we could outgrow those 2 where maybe not every litter would be able to go to one of those prisons. As far as our puppy raising prisons, or our prisons that take the dogs when they're 20 weeks and older, our goal is definitely to increase the number of prisons that we work with. And we're always kind of reaching out and talking to different institutions and hoping we can grow the number of institutions that we work with.
Wonderful. Denise, I'm going to go to you for another question here. What about dogs or well, the puppies or dogs really at any age that maybe don't do so well with the necessary training or are not healthy enough. Somebody was asking what happens through that process.
Yeah, so we call them career change dogs. So dogs who maybe at an early age identify that they may not make it, or even as they get older, are there some behavior concerns or even, some medical concerns, maybe hips and elbows didn't pass our qualifications, things like that. But yeah, they are adopted out. And we have a list of people who have filled out a career change application. And we kind of will go through that list, and also talking with, some of the long-term fosters of the dogs and things like that. So yeah, somebody ends up with a great dog who's had some wonderful training and foundation work and things like that. So yeah, they still get a great life.
All right. Another question for you while I have you here.
Sorry, I'm trying to avoid the sun here. Okay.
Yeah. I read that you had created a new position in your department recently. Can you explain that a little bit?
Oh yeah, we thanks to a grant, a wonderful donor, we were able to create a graduate services position. So Elizabeth, who has been on the client services team for a number of years, transitioned into the grad services position, and she works with our teams who are like more than a year post graduation, helping with, are there new skills that they want to train? Do they need a brush up of skills? And even things of, having discussions on retirement. Is it time to retire my dog? Or even, helping support the loss of a dog, the death of a dog, and giving those resources for the grieving process as well. So yeah, it's a great new position that we have, and we're really excited and really blessed that we were able to open that up. So.
Okay. Jeff, I'm going back to you. With all this talk of these future plans, what do you have to say about donor relation campaigns and the funding?
Well, that will be something we will start, I suspect, before the end of the year. So we're going to have a capital campaign in order to build the new building. And Sheila and Janet and I have started talking about that, and we'll rely upon the help of probably maybe a consultant who's willing to help us at a discount, because they can be pretty unnecessarily expensive in my opinion. But we're going to start out by talking to some of our most generous donors who have the greatest capacity, and see if somebody's willing to be an anchor gift, and then just work our way through over the next year or two to hopefully raise all the money we need for this. But it's it's a big undertaking, but this is a really fun story to be able to share, that we're going to build a puppy center, and this will allow us to change 40% more people's lives than what we're able to do right now. It's a pretty easy sell, I think.
Right. As we talk about that, the future plans, are you able to share anything more specifically about the building plans, where exactly, and some of the dreams that are part of that? I do believe I will chime in and just say that I believe we have some photos that we may be able to share later this week on our website. So I want to encourage people to visit the homepage of our website with a news article about this topic that will be there. But any more that you want to say about that, Jeff, as we're closing
You
up?
mean the building that we're going to do here, or are you talking about the New Germany facility?
It sounds like the building project here on site.
Okay. Yeah, we don't have any pictures of that yet, but we do have some New Germany pictures. But yeah, we don't even have plans for that yet. I mean, the original conversation was that we would build going east from the current facility. move some of the warehouse space over and put the puppy center at the far end so that it is more separated from the rest of the building, and making it clean, so to speak, will be that much easier. But we're really at the super early stages of that. So there's nothing to share yet. Once, I'd say in the next, hopefully month or 6 weeks, that we have plans together, basic plans together that we're comfortable with, then we'll have somebody kind of craft up some artwork for us so that we can share with everybody what we're thinking this will look like. But basically, more likely than not, we're just going to move east through the parking lot into that big open area that has grass and has kind of the little fenced in play yard just to the east of our property, or just to the east of our building.
Great. So yes, thank you for clarifying that. Later this week, we will have photos of the New Germany property on our website, along with a recording of this session that we've had here this evening. So if you want to revisit it or know of somebody who was not able to join us tonight, encourage them to listen in. We'll have it on a YouTube channel as well. And we're at 8:01. So I am going to end things, and thank you all for being with us tonight. It's been fun to share this excitement with you, and we hope to see you all again very soon.
Thank you all.
Thanks.